Hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Q&A. This was the, I guess, a little belated Q&A. I said I wanted to continue because we had so many questions for the one earlier in the week. Also, you have probably noticed that there has been no Winter's Day patch, like, recap video. That's probably going to remain that way. Winter's Day is okay and fun, and they've got some interesting stuff in there, like, you know, the exotic aqua breather, a couple of reward differences, but overall, I don't think it really warrants a whole video, so I won't be doing one of those this week. But yeah, plenty of questions for today. These are taken from the ones I wanted to do before, and some additional ones from the most recent episode, which we called Juggernauts. There will be more PvP stuff in the background. You guys seem to really like the PvP stuff. It makes me feel like I play much more carefully when I'm actually recording myself. I suppose that's a good thing. It helps you actually try and improve your game, right? But as long as people are enjoying it, especially over personal story stuff, then we'll do it. It seems like a lot of people in my guild, myself included even, have caught a bit of a PvP bug at the moment. I've always loved playing Conquest. I just think as like a spectator thing, it's not really going to go anywhere. But yeah, so let's get stuck in. Also, if you are one of the many people who left in the comments last episode that you don't like potatoes, I officially hate you. The first question comes from Chulin, who said, "Hey WP, what would be your way of implementing new weapon skills in GW2? There are some interesting ideas with this where people say stuff like, okay, you should be able to wield a sword, and then on your sword you should be able to choose from this auto attack or this auto attack, similar to how we can choose from, you know, 3 or 4 different heal skills at the moment. The skill 2 maybe you can get different options for. I think that if they were to do that, it would completely undermine their kind of arcadey, locked off build style system that they tried to go for with Guild Wars 2. And this is something I know that's put off a lot of people, especially around launch. Before the game came out, there were, you know, 4 or 5 points of serious heavy criticism that always got thrown at Guild Wars 2. People who were concerned about certain design choices, and this was one of them. The idea of how we get skills in this game, that they're locked to weapons. Will we truly feel like we can customize our characters as we wish? My opinion on it hasn't really changed since I've started playing the game. I think it's a really good idea, especially in terms of reducing how low the bar can go. You know, like in the first game where we had just 8 skills. We've got more skills now, but in the first game where we had just 8, but you had complete independent control over each of them, you had some really terrible players, like really terrible players. And I get that people should be allowed to play the game however they like, and if they are running something so terrible it makes the game an utter misery for them to get through, that's fine. But you can't also deny that in MMOs and multiplayer games, this can serve as a point of contention, and it's those points of contention ArenaNet have always tried so hard to get away from. So I do agree with the change, but I also really appreciate how damaging this is for builds in Guild Wars 2. I do not find build making in this game fun, especially when you operate at a meta level, less so in PvP, but certainly PvE. I feel like the variety that people claim is there is just so minor. It really strips away a lot of the fun. One thing I do very much look for in RPGs is a little bit of identity for myself, you know, a bit of identity for your character. And of course, Guild Wars 2, I feel none of it. The closest thing I get to actual identity is the class I play, and even that is somewhat dilute considering I have 7 out of the 8 classes on my account, and while I don't swap too much, I swap enough to not feel too much loyalty anymore, specifically to Elementalists. You don't get this feeling that, yeah, I am a water Elementalist and I do all this kind of specific stuff. It's just not fun, and I think a really big part of that, A, is the trait setup, but B, is the lack of variety in weapons. The way they've gated them off is great, but I feel like there needs to be a lot more weapons before we finally start to say, okay, yeah, you know, I'm an Elementalist that runs these weapons mostly. Right now, I just say I'm an Elementalist. It would be ridiculous for me to say, oh yes, I'm a Scepter Elementalist. That just makes you look like a noob. I've talked about this before. It makes you look like a noob. It makes people think you don't know what you're talking about. It makes them realize you don't have all the weapons in your inventory. You don't really understand your class. It's because the options available are far too small. So, it's a complicated issue. I don't agree with the idea of adding variety for variety's sake, where they just throw in, you know, let's say they doubled the available weapons in the game right now, yay, but none of them are viable, no one ever wants to run them. There's a very legitimate argument there in saying, what the hell's the point in doing that? And I agree that they should try to avoid that, but I do also think we have far too few weapons in the game, and it really hurts identity as far as characters concerned, and it's very, very important to me. Someone else asked a related question. This was Dusk Phoenix, who said, hey WP, just wondering if you feel like there's a few classes that should be able to wield a weapon that they don't have access to consider this just an addendum to the previous question. This is absolutely true. You know, some classes need them less. Elementalist in particular, every one weapon we get, though it's not really, it doesn't provide build identity because everyone gets all 4 achievements while wielding that weapon. They have tons of variety in the skills they can use. While you look at someone like the engineer, they just have 3 weapons, and there are both thematic and mechanical reasons for why they should have, for example, a mace. Like, there are wrench maces in the game that fits the engineer theme, and putting kits aside, of course, because you basically get a wrench with the toolkit anyway, kits aside, they don't really have a weapon that feels like the melee range slot, necessarily, and perhaps, you know, that's supposed to be a distinction of the class. I can understand that idea, but there is a niche there, and perhaps a reason for engineers to at least have a mace. Think about that. That's not even asking that much. That's only 3 more skills. I have heard stories about stuff like the devs looking into like longbow for guardians that would have different modes and stuff that I think ultimately was dropped, or I haven't heard anything about. So I'm sure they are looking into this stuff. I guess my answer to the core question is I would just add some more weapons. That's all I do. And yeah, they run the risk of maybe not being totally viable, but especially when it comes to PvE, where ArenaNet just allow you to swap everything all the time, there's going to be some niche where you want that weapon on you and you want to swap into it because it is optimum for that environment. And for those situations, why not? Alright, moving on to the next question is from Benjamin Sanson, who says, a question to follow up from your answer to the housing one. So this was actually 2 Q&As ago. We were talking about whether housing would come into Guild Wars 2. I expressed that I really don't care about it, and I don't think they're working on it. That's probably me reaching and, you know, inflecting my own opinions and my own dislike for housing. Apparently there was a CDI that I totally missed on housing, so I feel pretty bad about that. Considering they did a CDI, that does indeed up the chances housing might come into the game. I will tweak my original response with that information, but still, I think it's kind of low. Anyway, this person says, I like that they're adding nodes to your home instance to give it purpose. As something else they could add, how would you feel about trophies? For example, the items that show up in your personal story log actually have a presence in the home instance. They have added NPCs that you recruit, so why not these items? This is really a very cool idea because I think it's what the home instance was supposed to originally like really tap into. As you play through your personal story, the choices you made were supposed to have permanence, and how are they going to reflect that permanence? In your home instance. Obviously, it was a foolish and a difficult thing for them to have pulled off because there was never much incentive to return to your home instance. And you can sort of see the scraps of those ideas there. You know, oh, the NPCs appeared. He has nothing interesting to say to me whatsoever. He'll never do anything or be responsible for anything at all. But hey, at least he stood around there. Yeah, keying into this more would be nice for the home instances. I like the nodes, the practical reasons to return. And a trophy system would be cool. For people who are out of the loop, when this person mentions that items show up in your personal story log, if you actually look through your personal story log, you will notice every now and then there is like an inventory slot buried in the UI there, suggesting that these are items, like quest items, that your character is carrying around that don't appear in your regular inventory. Think about other MMOs where you get like a quest bag and only quest items will appear in there. You sort of have that in Guild Wars 2, and it's kind of an exciting, weird prospect. It doesn't mean anything, but you can mouse over and you'll see, oh, your character is carrying, you know, a tattered shard, an energy crystal or something, and these are things that they've collected mementos or important story items as you've gone through your personal story. And so, yeah, it would be cool. What if these things did sort of have some presence in your home instance? I was always a fan of trophy systems before, like, achievements became a thing, you know, with the last generation of consoles. I remember looking back at, like, PS2, Ratchet and Clank kind of games. You'd have your trophy rooms, right? And your achievements would actually be reflected by physical trophies and stuff appearing in these rooms. Those were so fun to collect. And this would be an incredibly fluffy, stupid cosmetic feature, really, if you think about it for Guild Wars 2. I'd never advocate this, the development of this, over other much more important things, real content to play. But that would be fun. I wouldn't even care if it was just a UI thing, you know? When you get achievements as well, there's so many achievements. What about the specific prominent achievements? They're reflected there. I do like the idea of having a Guild Wars 2 where I am excited to take my friends into my home instance and show all my stuff off, you know? And I'm sort of getting there a little bit, but it's all very vapid because all the stuff I've got there is just things I've bought through gems. It doesn't feel like I've really earned any of it, and it's always a bit stupid. It's always a bit tongue-in-cheek if I ever just say to someone, oh, do you want to come in my home instance? Oh, look at all this stuff. You know, there's a deep part of me that really does want to show stuff off, but the things that are in there at the moment, it just looks vain if you try it. So I don't know, a trophy case would be cool. I'm not saying I would favor that in development over other stuff though, I've got to say. The next question is from Nicholas Stankovic, who says, so I just finished watching your first Legend of Grimrock Let's Play, and I was wondering if you ever ended up creating your own dungeon. If not, would you prefer creating something with a little bit of story in it, or as cheeky as possible? Also, what do you think is in store for Legend of Grimrock 3? I never created my own dungeon. The most I ever got into creating content like that was when I was modding Oblivion, and I always had these crazy, full ideas that I feel like I'm a little bit scared now. I must be honest. I'm a little bit scared to ever try and pull these things off. There is someone I've been talking to recently who's working on a very interesting Guild Wars 2 app, and I won't talk about it or spoil it because it's totally up to them to talk about when it comes out. But it kind of has these interesting ideas where we as a community could, you know, almost like create our own content, and, you know, that's a very exciting idea to me. I would love to be able to, you know, tell some kind of story, but that puts you under the magnifying glass. It's like, oh, okay, now everyone's going to really be scrutinizing how this goes, and that is a little bit scary, you know. I do think I could probably make some pretty cool Grimrock stories, some pretty cool, you know, adventures, but it's one of those things I would really want to dedicate to, you know. If I start trying to do something, I tend to get a little bit obsessed with it and really go for it. And you might see me go off the radar for like 2 to 3 weeks. So yeah, I never made a dungeon. I'll tell you the truth, I never even really played any of the custom dungeons for that game. I vaguely remember at the end of the Let's Play saying, oh, you know, we could do some of these really fun ones, and I just never got round to it. I'm not even sure I'll get round to it for Legend of Grimrock 2 either, though it is still an option. As for what you're saying with Legend of Grimrock 3, I would really recommend you read their blog post. These guys are a nice small-time indie company. That means they're completely transparent about stuff. They're in the sweet spot. They've got a nice, smallish community. And there's no, like, trolls and stuff that they have to be scared of. They don't have their heads to have to be buried in the sand all the time. They're totally open about things they're trying, and then when they totally change, I'm going to key this into a discussion about ArenaNet in a second. It's awesome, and that will give you a lot of hints about Legend of Grimrock 3. I actually had to completely avoid their blog when the second game was coming out because they were so open about the game, and I didn't want to spoil half the stuff that was actually going to be coming up, all the things they were now technically capable of and they were sharing in their blog posts. They're great reads, but it will probably spoil whatever project they're working on for you before it comes out, so a bit of a word of warning there. Alright, so the next question is from Brimstar, who says, will you ever meet Matt Visual IRL? I think it's very likely, but don't tell him that. He's not allowed to know that. The next question is from Thalandor46, who says, ArenaNet recently posted an image to Twitter with the tagline, be ready for anything. Under the reasonable assumption that this is referring to the Season 2 finale, what do you expect anything to be? Then, putting expectations and viability aside, what do you actually want anything to be? Does being ready for anything mean I can throw all semblance of realism and understanding of game development out the window and say something like, oh yeah, they're going to change the whole world, they're going to double the playable maps, they're going to change the whole world, there's going to be this whole huge marketing thing, and not like the taxi cab marketing thing that they did, and the game's going to like triple in population, they're getting rid of the whole maps idea completely. Morgemoth is going to destroy all of these like rectangular walls between the maps, guys, and it's just going to become one giant open world, and there'll be thousands, you can have like 1,000-man Zerg if you like, and there won't be any lag. It's going to be unbelievable. It's going to be open world PvP. They're going to add hardcore leveling in open PvP servers. Oh, it's going to be so good. You know, like, that's that kind of crazy thing. I would love to see some of that. It's never going to happen though. Like, we have to moderate our expectations somewhere, right? I mean, I really feel like it's very difficult to be excited when they say be ready for anything. Is this a lack of creativity on my part? Because, like, I don't know, destroying Lion's Arch, that was pretty major, but ultimately didn't end up meaning too much, or feel like, in retrospect. So, I mean, it's just some cosmetic differences to a city, and it was locked off for us for a little while. What could be ready for anything mean? Story-wise, my current speculation, my current understanding or thought, narratively, I think this would make a lot of sense. We're currently doing our stuff at the cave, and the Pact is poised, especially if you read about how they describe the next patch, the Pact is poised to, you know, push off, almost it sounds like on their own, deeper into the jungle. I feel like in the finale, the Pact might get completely destroyed, just wiped out, just gone, and I think that would be very interesting. It would still preserve the alliance we set up this season, so it wouldn't be like a massive middle finger to all of our efforts this season or what we've been doing, but the destruction of the Pact, the main force right now, would be really good. It would make Morgemoth feel like a threat, it would put us on the back foot, it would give us a lot of stuff to do as we progress into a new sort of assault against Morgemoth. Ultimately, the story can't continue in the same way it's going, because otherwise, what, they're just going to go and hammer Morgemoth with a couple of glories of Tyria and and then that's it. It's over. So I think story-wise, that's what it could be. I think maybe they will actually kill Charr. The negativity and hatred for Charr has totally died down recently because, you know, all the negative rubbish about him from the personal story isn't there, and people are starting to see, you know, he actually is a pretty cool character. But you got to remember, they make like these sweeping narrative decisions and designs, hopefully at least, a long time ago. And so if they stick with their original plan of, hey, you know, we'll bring Charr back a little bit, but ultimately people don't like him too much, so maybe we'll see him killed, but we're going to have him go up in flames, you know, the complete annihilation of the Pact, that'd be pretty fun. It would make Mordremoth into a real threat. So that's what they could mean narratively. Gameplay-wise, I mean, will anything change at all? Maybe a few less waypoints around the world, something like that. But otherwise, I'm a little limited, really. Maybe if you guys have got some better ideas, you can jog my mind into some interesting places. Okay, so the next question is from Lord Mazdumundi, who says, hey WP, I was recently watching a dev live stream for a third-person shooter MMO hybrid called Warframe. They do it weekly and very open about different projects they're working on, and the audience is made well aware of all these things that are subject to change. It makes the general community crazy excited to speculate and talk about the upcoming changes, and it's also great to interact with the devs and get their opinions. They constantly interact with their Twitch chat. Do you think ArenaNet should be more open about their future plans, or at least current projects? Because it feels like they don't trust the community with having that information. I think what people should appreciate is this is like an age-old discussion. This discussion is this discussion is as old as video gaming on the internet is. Different gaming companies have different stances on the amount of information that they want to throw out. I am, and I will openly admit, 100% in the camp of transparency. I feel like when a company, just as ArenaNet does, is very tight-lipped, very closed doors about what they're working on, it sort of demonstrates a lack of respect for the intelligence of their audience, and ultimately, I don't think that really matters. Who cares if they respect your intelligence or not? It's about making fun video games, and they should just do it in the best way they see fit. So, you know, I'll put up with the way ArenaNet do things. I don't think the way that ArenaNet does things is uncommon at all. I do think there is a general trend of the bigger the game, the bigger the company, the more quiet people end up having to be. And I also don't blame a company when you see how ravenous and stupid people are, these opinions that they supposedly have to listen to constantly thrown at them, if they are taking that open stance. What I do find kind of curious is I wonder where this started for ArenaNet, because for as long as I've been in the community, I feel like there's been very little backlash at them revealing projects before they've come out early. Now, maybe I'm just forgetting things. Maybe this is selective memory, and it's actually happened a lot, and there's a lot of things that they still very much smart over. But the only thing I can really think of it that it's in a big way that has ever happened since Guild Wars 2's launch in particular is the precursor scavenger hunt thing, and even that, I feel like there is only so much vitriol towards it because they handled it poorly. They didn't come out at some point with a hard line saying, look, we had one team working on Precursor Scavenger Hunt. We've talked to you about it a few times. Today, that team was dissolved. Unfortunately, we have to go work on some Living World stuff. Hope you guys understand, and we'll let you know when we start working on it again. You know, if there was that kind of statement, that kind of openness, I don't think it would have been so bad. I do think that if you're going to be open, you have to be fully open, and you have to be prepared to say, yeah, you know, they stopped working on Precursor Scavenger Hunt to work on the destruction of LA. And then, yes, you are going to get people saying, oh, what the hell, I didn't want destruction of LA. I wanted the Precursor Scavenger Hunt anyway. And then you need to be able to respond and explain yourself and say, okay, well, yeah, we get your opinion. This was maybe hard to anticipate. We still don't know whether this is really the majority opinion. We still think this was worthwhile, blah, blah, blah. This is why we're still not going back to the Precursor Scavenger Hunt thing. Look, we've got other forms of progression we're looking into, such as ascended crafting, and we hope that that will fill this niche. You know, we have worries about the way this will impact the economy. We appreciate that Guild Wars 2 doesn't have too many super long-term goals like this. We actually like the bit of flavor that adds to the economy and the trading post, having these insanely expensive items, although we accept the casual player's mentality that they are too far out of reach. You know, you have a conversation, and if you're open enough to have that conversation, I think anyone with an opinion to be respected will see both sides of the argument, and overall, I think we would probably have a happier community for it. Most of the upset in the Guild Wars 2 community right now really does stem from just this closed door communication policy that they have enacted, but to me this isn't new. I came to terms with this a long time ago. I think you can only really expect this true openness from exceptional developers or smaller developers and indies, so it's kind of par for the course for me. Maybe I'm a bit jaded, cynical, but I can guarantee you I'm not as jaded or cynical as the other people who think you know, ArenaNet isn't doing anything at all. Okay, so the next question is from Milo Milk, who says, what's your win percent in PvP in a pre-made group, I assume? Kind of a difficult question to answer because I suck at maths, but I did jump in game earlier and record a little something for your answer here. So this is what my stats look like. Okay, guys, so these are my PvP stats. This is one of those weird account things. I've been a little bit tempted. I've always had questions about it to do like an account tour and just show off like the stats about my account. But I don't know how good that would really be. Anyway, so check it out. These are, I've played 5,500 games, won 3,194 of them. And so far, my unranked is much lower than my ranked. So only 64 unranked games, 44 of which I've won, compared to 3,543 ranked games. And that's because before this came through, any solo queues you did or team queues, and then before even that, where we had the old tournament system, they all count as ranked games when they moved over to the new system. I really want my ranked wins to be at 2k, because really this is over a 50% win ratio and I want to keep it that way. I sort of assume, you know, if you're just a default player, you don't play in pre-mades very much, you tend to end up with about 50-50 win rate. And I am above that. I'm actually kind of proud of that. But my history with PvP has gone through many rounds, and anyone who plays particularly NA, apparently things are better on EU. Anyone who's played NA will know this feeling. You're constantly interacting with people who kind of want to make teams, but people don't have the discipline for it. The chemistry's not there. People don't run the right specs or whatever. You know, you always feel like you're either better than the other people on your team, or they feel like they're much better than you, and things just tend to crumble, especially with historically such a small scene for the amount of teams that are out there. Even if you get a team, it was for a long time, you'd just be playing and you'd stomp pugs and very rarely actually get a really cool game. I don't really know how much that has changed, but whenever I've tried to have a team or anything like that, it's just always crumbled. NA's always done more of kind of a super puggy kind of idea, where all the really top players just end up adding each other on their lists, and they'll just say, hey, do you want to queue? And you're not really an official team. A lot of the time, you could even do it without any team speak, and you just absolutely destroy people that you were playing against. I dipped my toe a little bit in that sort of high end for a short while, but my stubbornness trying to play just one burst elementalist spec all the time definitely hindered me, especially in the old meta, and I don't know. I eventually ended up falling out of love with Conquest, as I've talked about many times. Anyway, so there you go, there's my stats. Currently for unranked wins, I really liked how they changed the pie chart here. For unranked arena wins, I'm pretty much purely engineer. I played, what, one game on Thief recently and won one game. But otherwise, I'm purely engineer. For just general games, you can see I've played 4,200 games on Elementalist. It dominates 75% of my total matchups. Mesmer is my second highest with 569, which is just 10% of my games, and the other ones are even smaller. But yeah, so pretty interesting. Forest of Niflhel, this is favourite map because, and I want it to stay this way. It's kind of like a mark of early PvPers. Forest was always the first thing that came up in the tournament rotations, and so tended to be the one you played most, just by virtue of the fact you could get kicked out. And yeah, so that's pretty much it. Almost 10k top stats awarded. It's fun stuff. I really do like these stats, and hopefully even if they start expanding on them too, which I guess they sort of did with the unranked ranked, but yeah. And lastly, a very light little question here from Donovan Pietrusga, who says, Asura versus Charr, who do you think would win? This is like one of those all-time questions. Asura! Come on, Asura! I actually really regret that in the living world we don't get to see Asura be as conniving and manipulative and mastermindish as they should be. They would completely run circles around the Charr. This is literally, do you favor brain versus brawn? You favor brain, okay guys? You favor their magical superiority, you favor their cohesion, their mastery of technology. Look at the Charr, they're not even unified. I mean, you can't even say Asura versus Charr. It would be Asura against one of the High Legions and, you know, maybe the conglomerate alliance they have around there, like we see with the Iron Legion right now. Asura would run circles around them. Even in 1v1-on-1 combat, you can't even be like, oh, the Charr are these great beasts, they just rip the head off of an Asura, when you throw the Asuran's magical mastery into the mix and their golems and stuff. No, I'm sorry, there's no contest to the Asura. And that's pretty much it. Thank you very much for watching the Q&A for today, guys. Leave any questions you may have down in the comment section below. Hope you enjoyed some of the footage, and I guess I will see you next time for some more Guild